Hello and welcome everyone to this new quantum conversation. So I'm Karen and in this channel we are demystifying the mystical and talking about experience such as teleportation, rejuvenation and expanded states of awareness. And today I am really excited to be able to introduce to Wendy Paquette. So Wendy, thank you very much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here for sure.
Well, we had a lovely conversation recently. We met through a mutual friend and said, you've got to talk to Wendy. She's had some interesting experiences that would be great to share. So before we dive into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to in the world?
Yes, of course. My name is Wendy Paquette. I am a transformational healer, consultant, and coach. So I'm able to work with people looking at where they're at today in their reality, and then see where they'd like to go in their future, and then see what's standing in the way and remove all the obstacles. So it's a success track, basically.
Yeah.
I'm currently opening up a leadership center in Ontario, Canada, where we take people through and actually allow them to have an experience that causes them to step fully into themselves and express themselves in their reality as the most powerful self they are now. So that's what I'm up to right now. Yeah, it's super exciting, actually. I live in Ontario, Canada, so that's where I'm from. That's where I've, been living for the last almost 5 decades.
Okay. And this is very magical energy around Canada and Canadians. And I love the title that you have of an energy magician. So it sounds very magical what you're up to. So
that's what my friends call me. That I usually don't use that word, but they do, because that's, I think, what it feels like when you transmute frequency or you transform energy, when you experience the difference between having an emotion attached to a memory and then working with me and having that emotion transformed and no longer feeling it, but still having the memory. It kind of feels like a magic trick, I guess, but it's not magic, it's energy, it's science.
Yeah, brilliant. So I love that term, transmute frequency. Would you like to talk into that a bit? So, I mean, how do you go about transmuting frequency?
Well, that is the unknown to me, how it occurs. It's almost like a quantum experience, right? A quantum physics experiment in living form. So it feels like being able to identify a certain frequency, which has, I would guess, the numbers attached to it, right? It expresses itself, as a frequency, which also is attached to an emotion, which is attached to a memory or a situation or a thought. And the capacity that I have is to take that frequency and transmute it to source frequency. So however you are being expressed as yourself, transmuting it to your source frequency so that you're able to access that memory still without the emotional attachment. So you're not reliving that program or that pattern over and over and over again. Now it just becomes somewhat of a memory. You can access it and look at it if you'd like to, but it doesn't have a trigger, and it doesn't cause you to attract more situations of the same.
Yeah, brilliant.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I hear alchemy and alchemist and words. Yeah, brilliant. So, can you take me back to your experiences or your first experiences of something that is beyond this 3D world, your experiences of
Otherworldly things.
however you want to define them.
Yeah, well, the first thing that ever occurred in my life to show me that we were more than what we see with our eyes was, I think I was around 16.
Okay.
And I had a friend who was over, and my mom had bought my uncle a magic book. So it's funny that you say like energy magician. She bought him a magic book because my uncle does magic tricks all the time. And this friend, I was away at work, and my friend was staying at my house, and he was looking through this magic book, and playing around with some of the tricks. And one of them was to take a ring box with a ring, hold it in your hand, cover it over with like a kerchief, and then somehow make it disappear. And there was like elastics involved, like some kind of thing where something actually occurred where you can make it disappear. And what was discovered was, while he was doing it, he realized that he had a thought in his head, like, I don't need all these trickery things. I'll just make it disappear. And so basically put it in the box, put the ring inside the box, cover the box up with the kerchief, put his hand over it, imagined in his mind putting it somewhere, coming back, opening it up, and it was gone. And so when I came home from work, and he was like going, yeah, I got to show you this cool magic trick. So he shows it to me, and he doesn't say anything. He just shows me the magic trick. Oh yeah, I learned it from your mom's magic book. You know, she bought it from your uncle. And so he showed it to me a couple of times. I'm like, oh man, that's so awesome. Show me how you do it. He goes, well, I got to tell you something. I'm like, what? He goes, well, I realized when I was doing this that I didn't need the trickery part of it. I actually can make it disappear, and I can make it return. And so at that time, you're 16, we're talking like, you know, over 30 years ago, no idea what he was up to, what he was doing. We were freaked out a lot. We were thinking, oh my gosh, like, like what the heck is this? He's like, made me swear not to tell anyone because they might think he's crazy and put him in some kind of like a circus or experiment or something. It was like, I mean, when you're 16, your imagination goes crazy. So we didn't say anything to anyone, but we would sit up in my room, and he would sit there and pull things from downstairs. So my mom had an ivory elephant, McDonald's straw, and he just kept putting stuff in a pile and bringing it up. And then one day we were sitting downstairs, and he's like, I have like 5 different pennies with 5 different ears. I'm going to send them all away. So he did, and they disappeared. And he said, I want you to tell me what year, and I'll bring back the year. And it was sitting right beside me. He could bring back the year like 1980. It was like, you know, he went through all these years and brought them back one at a time. And so I was grilling him on like, how are you doing this? Like, what's happening? Like, I want to learn how to do this. And he said, I don't know, I'm just imagining it with my mind. I could see it clearly detailed in my mind, and then it touches the palm of my hand. And then if I grab it, it shows up, and if I don't, I kind of miss it. That's all we knew. That's all we knew. It was just like this freaky, crazy thing that we kept a big fat secret, only to learn years later that he was doing telekinesis. So at 16, my mind was like blown open by something surreal and something seemingly magical without even realizing what it was or the means to explore it more. And so from that moment forward, I was very much a seeker in my own right. Always like open to possibility, like knowing there's something else and wondering what else is out there and what's going on. So that kind of started my journey. And then I would dive into other things like energy medicine, and I found the craziest stuff. Like once you're open to it, it starts to show up everywhere.
Yeah.
So that was the first extreme experience. And then I would say later in my life, like 5 years ago, so we're talking, you know, after that experience, it was probably 30 years later, I was doing a lot of healing work with people. I would do deep state theta hypnosis and you name it. I had learned every technique I could find and perform them on other people because I thought, this is amazing. Like other people can heal and change and shift and be well with those experiences. Like, why wouldn't everybody know this? Right. And I came to a moment where I realized my own unhappiness. And I thought, this is really strange. Like, how could all this really beautiful stuff be happening in my life and I am deeply sad? And so I had a moment of like throwdown with myself, I guess you'd say, where I just was angry. I'm looking at my life going, everything looks perfect. Like it's beautiful outside, it's sunny, it's gorgeous, beautiful house. I have a husband and, you know, and a family. Everything looks beautiful on the outside, but inside I felt eternally sad. And that piece really bothered me. And I'm thinking, this isn't why we're here on the planet. Like, if this is it, pluck me off this godforsaken hurling stone in the multiverse and get me off of it, because this isn't fun. I don't play here. This isn't how I want to be in the world. So that became the beginning of a pretty magical experience that occurred, where I meditate in the bathroom. I think it's 2 birds, 1 stone. I get clean and I have a conduit of water for meditation. So I have a real deep connection. And I was really upset that day that I discovered myself sad. I was like standing in the mirror, screaming and yelling at myself, looking into my own eyes, going, listen, like, you know, if this is true, like I'm speaking to my own soul, if there's something else, if there's more, if asking it to get is given is true, and if you know, there's things that in this reality that we can't see with our eyes, but they do truly exist, then show it to me now. If I have a special gift or I'm here for a purpose, like drop that on me now, or please take me off of it because this isn't fun. And so after that, my own magical experience occurred, and I was gifted the ability to read and see frequency and transmute it. So what it feels like is living like a quantum physics experiment. That's what it feels like. What it looks like is people's lives are transformed because the things that used to hold them back are no longer in the way, because that's part of the identity of who you become. So, and I'm often challenged with similar things. Like I'll have something come up in my reality where I realize there's an emotional response that's other than joy, and I will transmute it and then no longer have that experience any longer. So it's really awesome. Really, really awesome.
Oh wow, but there's a lot we can go into there. So I'm just thinking at the age of 16, I'm just imagining myself in how exciting that discovery must have been to
You know what? It was like mind blowing in the way that when you're 16, you really don't know anything. Like you think, you know, like you're just really, truly coming into yourself, and to witness something like that was like, I wanted just to play in that realm all day. The struggle for me, I suppose, at the time was I couldn't do it. So it was someone else doing it, but I knew it was possible. So I kind of dove deep into the mechanics of it. Like, what's happening? Like, what do you do next? And what do you see next? And what's happening next? Like, I try to go through, but I've yet to actually experience that, that moment. But it truly blew open my mind to possibilities beyond my wildest dreams, for sure. I mean, it started the journey, no doubt. After that, it was like a neighbor had a ghost in their house that they saw, the parents and the kids saw. There was something that happened across the street that was otherworldly. Like it's just one thing after another started occurring. It was pretty magical.
Yeah. Well, so did your uncle, I'm just a bit curious here, did your uncle actually tap into that capacity to develop it, to use it for?
No, he's none the wiser. My mom bought that book for him for his birthday, and he never knew the experiences after because we kept it completely secret.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Actually, we tested it on my mom. I wanted my mom to know so bad because it was so cool. So my friend would do the trick on my mom and actually do it. And then I'd tell her, like, I'm like, he doesn't need any of this stuff. She's like, yeah, whatever. I mean, he's literally putting things that he got to the point where he just put his hands and do it, right? He didn't need anything else, and make it disappear and then make it come back. And he would have short sleeve shirt on. So there's no way that it could wear up a sleeve or whatever, but the closed mind is so powerfully true. Like when you decide and believe something to be true, it is, and it will be proven that until you shift your perspective. So I think that's where it's like the modern day miracle, right? It's where you believe something to be true. And this is what I've learned through my, my discoveries thus far. Whatever you believe to be true is. Like that's end of statement. It doesn't matter what it is, good, bad, or indifferent. If you believe it to be true, it is, and you're going to get it, because your reality, which you're seeing in holographic nature, is going to show you exactly what your brain believes is true. Yeah. And so it takes the victim out of things, right? It truly does. It removes you from the space of that's happening to me and shifts it into I'm creating that. Therefore, I can change it. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it aligns with the teachings is whatever you can conceive in your mind, you can hold in your hands.
You know what? And I never really heard it from that perspective, but 100% true, right? And that's what he was doing. It was just it showed me who I was at a very early age without having the journey. I hadn't gone through a journey up until that point. So it blasted open my mind to a point of no return, really. It was like, I don't know that it could have been any more amazing. Yeah. I'm just going to, I have to open my door. My dog is scratching at the door. Hold on. Okay. I was trying to avoid that, but he won't let it go. Okay. My apologies. It was getting loud. So yeah, I look back, I didn't have like huge things like what occurred to me, like may say 5 years ago occur. But that moment, that experience changed everything. And then learning, I think what the last experience was more showing me the holographic nature of our reality. Like you literally are seeing your belief system show up in front of you in full swing. So what I notice is sometimes you don't know, like your subconscious holds all these things. So for me, opening the Leadership Training Center will cause, I likened it to like cabbage for the colon. It just wipes out all that crap that's in there from the day you were born up until now. That's kind of what the experience is like for me, and why I would love to share it with others. The other piece is whatever's showing up for you, it's because somewhere in your subconscious or conscious mind, you've decided it's true. And so therefore it is. And the reason, and how you know is because it's there, because it's happening, because it is true. So to me, that's, I mean, the most important piece, because you can look around and go, oh, I don't like the way that is. That makes me sad. That makes me unhappy. Or I don't like this about my life. But that's great because you have a statement across the board. But what are you going to do about it? It's not you're dealt a poor deck or you're dealt a raw deal. It's more, great. Now let's look into that. Let's shift that perspective so that piece no longer exists and you can see something different show up for you. And that's where, like, you know, the modern day miracle occurs.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's releasing those old emotions to allow the space for the new to come in. Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I mean, when I had 5 years ago, I call it my enlightenment experience, and I air quote it because I don't know what else to call it. It was more like that moment where I was making demands of myself in the mirror. I went into the bathtub and I used all the techniques I had at my disposal on myself and made a demand of a master to show up, to show me what I'm up to. I'm like, I'm here. I get it. We're not born with instructions, but tell me, like, I've heard people can connect with their guides, can connect with their, you know, whatever. They can see other people on the other side, whatever that looks like. What I wanted was someone who I could lean into when I wanted support. So I'm like, show me a master that knows more than me, that I know, knows more than me, that can support me in a way that I've never been supported before. And the miracle part of that for me was that God showed up. And I'm not a religious person. I didn't, you know, I was born and raised Catholic, but I didn't subscribe to any of, you know, that. I kind of look at all of the religions as possibilities, right, leading to something. So I had no real point of view about it. But he showed up, I think, representing the master in my reality that is perceived to know more than anyone, like was the miracle maker in itself. And so that experience, him being the master, caused me to have an altered reality. And that what happened was he walked over, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna have this great conversation, like I'm gonna have a conversation with God kind of thing. And really no words were spoken. He just put his arms open to hug me. And I was in this like deep state trance experience. And I'm like, okay, like I'm a hugger. So I reached out my hands, and as he's hugging me, he then, like, I'm like, you know, in there. And he disappeared into my body. So I poof, poof, like right in. And I'm like, okay, like now what kind of thing. Like I just didn't know what else to do in that space. And his words, it was this deep booming, like, your first task is to love with my heart. And I was like, okay. Like, you know, if you can imagine yourself in that miraculous moment, like what you would do and say, you could think of everything while you're in the conscious reality, but when you're in there, I had nothing. I'm like, okay, like that sounds like doable. So when I brought myself out of that situation, it just kind of ended. And I ended my little session with myself. But what was actually gifted in the moment was so huge. It took a mere like over 8 months for me to actually figure it out. It was like when you ask for something, they always say, watch what you ask for, be careful what you ask for, because you'll get it. Well, really, it was my whole like eye-to-eye conversation with myself in the mirror delivered. So everything I wanted in that moment got slammed into my reality in the consciousness of who I be. And I'm coming out of that going, okay, what just happened? Like the curiosity in my own mind, because that was a very minuscule amount of words for me to realize what had occurred, right? So of course I tried figuring it out, and it took just over 8 months, and it came out of a moment where I was frustrated, and I found myself saying certain things, doing certain things with my hand, and it shifted the experience. So I was really upset by something, and I pulled the reality into my hand, like going, what's happening here? And I was holding it in my hand. And then I didn't know what to do with it. So I started asking questions. I'm like, am I that? Am I? And I was asking the energy of my frustration. And then I thought, what am I going to do with this now? Like, I'm not that. That's not me, right? I know that. And the only thing I could think of was to love it with God's heart. I was like, oh. So I went to place my hand in front of my chest, and all of a sudden my whole body like went to breathe it in. And I was like, what just happened? Like, I felt that. It was like a whole bodily response. It was a visceral response. And when I went back in my mind to find where that frustration existed and that anger existed, it was completely gone. Like, I couldn't find it. It was nowhere to be. I was like, whoa, what just happened? So I retraced my steps, found something else that frustrated me, did the same thing, and found it worked again. So that began my journey of realizing, okay, something's happening here. Something's going on. The very next day, I tested on someone else, like unbeknownst. We were having a conversation, and it came to me to try it. And so I did, and it worked with her. And it just became something that I did. And I likened it to like that miracle moment that I had with myself. And then I turned it into sessions working with people. And now having done a lot of leadership training, like personal development, emotional intelligence work, I was on the like absolute hunt for what I was up to, because doing it and having results is great, but I didn't learn it from somewhere. It came directly from me. So it was unique to me. But the processes itself, like the energetic process, to me had a connection. So quantum fit is like being a walking, quantum science experiment in my hand, like in my head, in my energy field. And I led myself to do some emotional intelligence work, some leadership training. And what I realized is in the room, and at the end, like it's 4 months long. So by the time I was done, what I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, that's like, it has the appearance, like it's an experiential situation. So you're in a room with people, and you're going through a bunch of really, interesting stuff, fun stuff, and you're discovering more about you. But what occurred that most people don't understand is in the room, exponentialized by the amount of people in the room. So for me, I think it was 60. You're shifting those frequencies and perceptions based on your dedication to yourself in the room. So the experience is individual, but the result is across the board, because you're shifting the frequencies of all the beings in the room doing the same work that you're doing. And so for me, I was like, okay, wow, that is miraculous, right? I can do it one-on-one in my own way. I deal with the now. This seemed to grab big, spheres of things and quantify it. So needless to say, every move forward that I make new discoveries on what's up, what's going on, how to shift things so people can have a really joyful life and access their dreams, like actually live them, because they're not impossible. The impossible lives in your brain, in your belief systems, in your thoughts. Possibility exists in this reality now. The difference between impossible and possible is that shift in perspective. And so that's what I'm able to create with people, is that shift, which to me is like modern day miracle. If you can change someone's mind in a short frame of time and their whole reality shifts because of that, how can that not be miraculous?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I sat with my world. So I'm super excited to be creating a space for other people to experience what I know. I mean, when I get clues regularly on what I'm up to based on books that I'm led to read, or maybe a podcast I'm listening to. It seems weird, but when I was figuring out how I shifted that perspective, how I shifted the frequency without using words, what I realized is I was asking the energy, the situation, the issue, the emotional piece of what bothered me, I was saying, am I that? Like if it was, I don't know, untrustworthy, say, that's one thing I find across the board is number one on the top of everybody's list, and they just don't realize it. Untrustworthy. And I'm like, someone, maybe they got cheated on, or maybe their job, they got screwed over at their job or whatever, or the friend did something to them. It's across the board trustworthiness. So I'm looking at this going, say it's untrustworthiness, like, am I that? Am I? And I'm like, no, right? No, I'm not. Right. So that's what I would bring to my heart space. I answered the question and then breathed it in. And it had a visceral response. I could feel it move through my body as though I had just returned a piece of me that I kept separate. And I called that a lie. That's a lie I bought about myself somehow. So, and I'm using that as an example, like for most people out there who are thinking, like, how could I use this on myself, right? Trustworthiness is a two-way street. It becomes you don't trust you, so therefore you don't trust all your decisions, and you don't trust anyone else or their decisions or their suggestions or their guidance, because untrustworthiness is a frequency. And if you're carrying that belief pattern, you're going to see it everywhere because it gets to show up for you. But what the exciting thing for me was when I discovered the words I was using, I was asking the question of the energy of the emotion or the situation. Am I that? Question mark. Am I? Question mark. Right. And that was my magic. Those were my magic words to myself, like asking those questions. I found I was led to the story of Moses, and I'm like, oh yeah, the burning bush thing, that thing, that the whole story of that. I'm like, I really don't know that story well enough. I should learn it. And then that was just a query in my head. And one day I found, I'm like, oh, I have this Bruce Lipton book that I absolutely adore. I go, you know what? I have it in physical, but I want it digital. So I went online into Amazon and I was going to buy it digitally. And as I'm on his page to buy the book, I look underneath and it's like other books by Bruce is the Moses Code. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can learn the story of Moses. Like I'll buy the Moses Code book instead of the other one. So clearly I was led for that. I start reading it and I'm reading the story about the burning bush, learning that then, he asked the burning bush, which is God, what is your name? And God replies, I am that I am. Mm-hmm. And instantly I'm like, wait a second, those words sound very familiar to me. And so I wrote it down. I wrote, I am that I am. And then I looked at the words that I was using to transmute those frequencies. And it's the questions, am I that? Am I? Were the exact name of God, word of God, flipped and opposite. And so it all started making sense to me, like, oh my gosh, I'm using that to flip the energy to cause a new perspective. And it was all combined together. It's otherworldly when I think of it from that perspective, because I'm like following my own trail of possibility and then landing on the answers and then putting the pieces together and then keep going because it's never ending. But those to me were like the most magical days ever. I don't know that I'll ever in a million years forget the elation that I felt in those discoveries, because it started to put pieces together, right? And then now I'm always open to what else I'm up to. So I keep finding clues here and there and everywhere. And my capacity to see beyond what's actually here has gotten way greater because of that openness. Yeah. Right. So it's a super fun space to live in, and how I can share it with the world. That's the only thing that, like, I mean, how not to share it with the world? Like, who wouldn't want to live a new perspective? Everybody is searching for what they see as happiness or joy is a better frequency. And so I liken it to that. It's like accessing joy. And a step further than that is accessing like peace, right? You can go individual peace, family peace, worldly peace, like world peace in that way. If you're raising your frequency, the lower frequencies are dropping off or you're transmuting them. What happens when critical mass hits? Everybody feels more peaceful. Like, what happens to wars across the globe when you actually hit a critical mass of a high frequency? I mean, the earth itself is raising the frequency, you know what I mean, of itself. So the earth is raising, the people on it, planets, the plants, trees, animals, everything on it. So it just really opens up where we're actually headed. And it's exciting to see it from my perspective. I mean, Could everyone see it from that perspective? I believe so, if they're willing.
If they're open to it, yeah. Wow, well, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing all of that. That's once again, there's a load we can go into there. So, can you take us back to that moment where you meet God, as you describe it? Uh,
Yeah.
what were you feeling in your body, and as a, if you were an outer person looking onto you and what was going on with you at that moment, what would you have seen? What was going on? Because you were obviously in this multi-dimensional space.
Mhm.
But,
Um,
but can you go deeper into that? What was going on within you? Can you remember?
yeah. Well, as far as what I could see was I I asked for, I was taking myself through my own personal, and I was following Dolores Cannon's QHHT method, and I took myself into, before you go deeper into theta, you go to a happy place. So I was in a happy place. For me, it's the beach. So I'm at the beach, like in my mind, I'm like laying on the beach, and I'm waving. I notice I'm like waving my hand through the sand in my, in my happy place, and the sand like dropped open to this vortex, and I kind of sucked into it. It was almost like a cartoon, like I sucked into this vortex, and I landed in this room that was cement. It was dark, it was gray, it felt damp. I landed sitting on this like cement block. There was cement walls, cement floor. To the right, I saw a cement desk. And then I did see someone sitting there, but it was in the peripheral, so it was kind of blurry. And I remember hearing three parts of me, or noticing three aspects of myself: my high self, my low self, and the witness, which I believe is God essence in you. Like it's all knowing. Because I'm watching myself ask the question, I see someone over there. I asked for a master. I'm like, what's the matter? Are you afraid to look? Well, I'm looking at my high self, maybe asking my lower self, like, what's the matter? You asked for this. Are you afraid to look now and get the answer? And then I feel my low self respond going, well, no, I'm looking, right? But the witness in me is watching all of this occur. So it was very surreal. So as I turned my head to look, this like tall, like over 7 foot or more, I don't even know how tall, man stands up, and I'm looking at him. He has the long hair. It's like a photo that my grandmother had at her house up on the wall of what what he would look like. He's got this long hair, this white robe, and a sash. I'm like, okay. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I asked for a master, and okay, this is undeniable because I did not expect, it'd be God that show up. And that was the moment where he stood up and then started walking around to me, around this desk to me. And he opens up his arms, and I was just kind of like, okay. Like, okay. Like, I'm a hugger. I can hug. Like, that was my only response in my head. So in the moment, I was very present. No questions, no mind chatter, no nothing. It was just very present in like, I don't know what's going to happen next. I have no idea. I had no idea that this was going to occur. And oh my goodness, like, oh my goodness, that's all I could think of. Like, okay. So I'm like, well, arms around me, and my face was in his belly wall. And I was like, oh, and all of a sudden he went poof, right inside me. In the moment, it was like, I paused, and this like silence was just hanging there.
Mm.
I'm like, and it was almost until I asked the question, like, what's next? Like, okay, what's next? But nothing occurred in that space until I asked the question. And that's when I received your first task is to love with my heart. That was it. And that began the journey. So in the moment, it felt like all of the cliche or the stated things. I say cliche because you hear it, ask and it is given. You hear that all the time. And you want to believe so badly that that is true, that statement. But there's so much doubt in your mind that you hear it and you're like, whatever. right? So I felt as though that moment would have stayed silent until I opened my mind to ask a question. In which case I received, to me, what seemed like a cryptic answer. Because after that, after all was said and done and I was in my reality, I really didn't know what had happened. I gave the proverbial thought in my head, did that really just happen to me? Like, I did what every single client has ever said afterwards, like, wow, that was profound. Did that actually happen? They questioned themselves. So I did the exact same thing. So I was able to get it in a different way. And then for like 2 days after that experience, I found myself really in and out of my reality. Like, it's almost hard to see, but I remember going downstairs and I'm an avid reader, total book nerd, mostly reference. So I'm looking for answers in these books. Like, I'm going to find answers, and I'm pulling out books and I've got them open. I don't even know which ones I'm looking at. I remember I'm in the dark in the basement, sitting on a coffee table, reading something. I recall my husband coming downstairs and sitting on the couch, and he's staring at me, and in my mind, I'm like, why is he staring at me? Right? I was getting irritated by the fact that he was just staring and he didn't say anything. And so finally I looked at him like, what are you doing? And he looked at me and he's like, what are you doing? Like, in the dark, sitting on the coffee table trying to read. So I had this, like, it felt like forever moment in a second where I went, okay, my husband's grown up Catholic, his parents Catholic, still go to church. He was an altar boy. I'm thinking, I'm going to tell him what happened to me. And if I'm going to get judged, I guess I'm going to get judged by my husband. That's who I'm going to get judged by. And so I told him what happened. I'm like, well, you know how, I do meditation, and sometimes, you can communicate with others on the other side. I go, well, I did that. And I asked our master, and God showed up. And as I said that, up until that moment, I had zero emotion. It was more like I was hardcore thinking what was happening. It was all in my head, right? Until that moment, I said it out loud to him. It's the first time I ever said anything. And it was only maybe 24 hours later. And the response that he had was completely opposite than what I had expected. I'm thinking he's going to judge me, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I saw God, basically, was what I was saying. And he looked like almost frustrated with me, because I immediately started to cry. I said the words, God showed up, and I could not stop crying. I was crying and crying and crying. I mean, the reality, because I said it out loud and to my husband, caused me to know that it actually happened. It wasn't just in my head. And saying it to him, he's looking at me, he's like, why are you crying? Haven't you ever heard of somebody seeing God before? I'm like, oh, what? What? Like, I wasn't expecting that, and I was frustrated. I was like still coming to my own realization, but I'm like, what are you talking about? How could you possibly say that way, right? As if it's normal, it's all right. To me, it was so not normal. So that part of the experience to me was really pivotal, because the realization that it had actually occurred was like really, really an all-encompassing in that moment. And it really caused me to really sink in and go, okay, this reality really is made up of something way greater than we understand.
Yeah.
Right. And then it started showing up later and later, like all the evidence of what was occurring. But let me tell you, you do ask and you do get what you're asking for. So you get to be super crazy deliberate in what you're asking for, because I didn't know that if I made that demand that I have everything, and now that what showed up would be so profound and so huge. It caused a lot of turmoil in that I was on a path which I thought was a career for me, and I was dead set that was what I wanted to do until this occurred. And now I felt a sense of obligation to share it, to teach it, to do it. And I felt like this piece of separation in my reality, like, oh my, why would I have to do this? Now it feels like a job. Now it feels like a duty. And now it's something I don't want to do. Like, I had almost like human regrets about it. And then when all is said and done, when I pulled all those things together, what I realized that I was gifted in that moment in the tub when God showed up and disappeared inside of me and gave me that task is I embodied oneness.
Mm, definitely.
I embodied oneness in the sense that we are not separate from anything. Scientifically proven holographic reality where everything is in everything just expresses itself as something physical based on a frequency or vibration. So scientifically proven to be true, we are everything. I was gifted the ability of that sight,
Mm,
that actual sight. So then it was from that point until now translating, what am I seeing in my reality? How do I distinguish whether that is something that I want or like or need or whatever, however I want to look at it? And how can I shift it? Because if it's showing up for me, it's because I created it. I believe it to be true, and therefore it is.
mm, yeah.
Right? And so how do you take that and shift that perspective just so that you no longer feel that sense of, like, maybe it's deep sadness or whatever I was feeling before, and
Mm,
shift it into possibility and the feeling of love or joy or something other than, a negative frequency or a lower frequency. So it's really it's really quite profound when you look at it from that perspective, because we are all each other. Like, I am you and you are me, and whatever you're loving in someone else, whoever it be, that is also you.
yeah.
So the things that you admire in someone are aspects of yourself.
Mm,
Are you possess those as well. Like, those, there's nothing for naught. It's all there, right? And the things that you're not liking, that you're seeing, is a written program that is causing you to identify a lie. So if you're
mm,
seeing something that's showing up in the world that you absolutely cannot stand and you hate it and it hurts you, it's because somewhere in your programming, which I mean your brain, you've decided that that thing is so. It's true. It's happening. That's what's happening. The identifier of the lie, the thing that can be transmuted or shifted, is the negative frequency that shows up with that thought or with that experience or with that visual. Right? So once you shift what's actually happening and you see it differently, you've now unhooked your emotion from that reality, because now you're seeing holographically something different. It's like the facet of a diamond. A diamond, as its brilliance, you shift it just one way and it looks completely different, because
mm.
every facet shows you a different window of possibility. It's very much like that, if you're comparing it to a physical thing. So imagine your life like that. If you suddenly realize that everything you're looking at is because you decided it was, and you also can change that.
Yeah.
How would you live your life differently if you could have everything you wanted, like in a holistically loving, profound, abundant way?
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that is really a powerful share, and your experiences so resonate with mine. Being in this state of oneness, being in this flow state, and there's absolutely no questioning. It's just being in this multi-dimensional experience where we are out of the body, in the body, being the observer, but it's all so much joy and peace at the same time, and ecstasy. And the fact that you were able to share it with your husband actually triggered that reaction and that emotion. That is, for me, is a powerful share, because I feel it's so important to share these experiences instead of staying up in our head and not daring to share because we're going crazy or whatever it is. This is real, and this gets to be shared in order to empower others. So thank you very much for sharing these beautiful expanded states of consciousness and the awareness that came through that, because everybody's experience is obviously unique, but we can empower each other along the way by sharing our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, so can we just touch on this transformational leadership a little bit? Because
Yeah.
obviously, I mean, I've been through this experience as well, this 4-month experience, and what one of the things that came for me was I had a vibrational shift, and I can't really explain the how, the why, but being in this collective energy with a collective intention that we want to create this world of peace, joy, service, unity, whatever that is. And these people coming together with this collective energy amplifies the energy. And then, people were popping people, these miracles were showing up. For many people, they were having these aha moments and these experiences coming into their reality just during this creative experience together. So would you like to dive into, because I'm excited about what you're creating, would you just like to touch on that a little bit more?
Well, I guess it's the processes itself, are not something we talk about. It'd be like giving you the details of the magic trick when you're going in, the magician's there, 2 hours with the magic. And if I tell you all how he does everything, then you'll be like, why do I want to go? Yeah. But that's the beauty and the transformation inside of the room. But I believe it's, like I was saying earlier, it's your intention to be more than what you see in the mirror. It's your intention to actually experience yourself fully, because everyone knows they're born for more. I mean, I shouldn't say everyone. Most people have that desire and that burning, knowing about themselves that, the life doesn't exactly look like what they expected it maybe to look like, or thought it would look like, or even hoped that it would look like. Because as a young person thinking, oh my gosh, the world is my oyster, I can do anything I want. And then they, step into their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and go, I'm not really pleased with what I'm living right now. And so I liken the training to going in with the intention of committing to themselves that they're just going to explode into themselves in that space. Really, whatever it looks like, just commit to the process of being in the training room without knowing actually what you're going to be up against. And the intention, which always delivers. I mean, everything you receive is always based on your intention, because you're seeing it going and going, yeah, I want that now. I want to be more of me now. I want to enjoy my own power, my own abundance now, because it's all possible. This is an infinite reality. So there's no limitation except for the one that you decide is there. So that could be with everything in your life, or anything from your relationships to your personal well-being, to your career, to your finances, to your abundance level, everywhere, to where you live. It could be anything at all. Those things, you gift those things to yourself when you decide to do the training. Yeah. That's what occurs. It's not a group training and everybody does and has the same experience. It's the opposite of that. Everyone's going in with the intention of exploding into themselves so that they come out more fully them. But you just happen to quantify that by being in the room with, say, 50 other people or more. So you're exponentializing your own growth based on the people that are doing the same work with you, but they're individually doing it for themselves. And you become really close to the people there, because they all have the same intention as you. They all want more out of themselves than they've seen thus far. And so by the time you're complete with your training, you have all these friends that you realize that you have such a kinship with, because they had the same instinct about themselves, the same knowing and the same courage to step into a training room to do, emotional intelligence and personal development, all at the same time, all in the same training together. So it's a pretty magical experience for me. I don't think anything excites me more, because of what I've come to understand. I see the power of it coming out the other side. So my intention is to have a container of support all the way through, so that you just get to keep exploding more into yourself. Having the abundance, it's here. If you're not seeing it, you keep reaffirming that you're not seeing it, you're never going to see it until you shift that perspective somehow, right? And it's not as easy as we would like it to be. It's not as easy as okay, I just changed my mind. I would love it to be that. That would be the simplest thing on the planet, but you get to create a process for yourself that actually causes that. And I feel like that's what I've intended to create in the world, is taking a training like that and then adding my own evolved expression with it, so that people can have everything they've ever wanted. I mean, I say that with all aspects of life embodied, because everybody wants something different. Most people will say, and I find this really a dichotomy somewhat, because they're looking for happiness I always replace the word happiness with joy, because happiness seems like a happenstance of a moment. Something causes happiness. Joy is a state of being. Happiness can come and go. Joy is a state of being, and I think that's what most people are after. And if they were joyful more than they were anything else, can you imagine what their life would look like?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I'm like, yes, like, yeah, that is so amazing. It is the type of peace that we're all after, that waking up in the morning and being joyful, not being dreadful about what's coming their way, owning their responsibility, and like, you know what, energetically, scientifically, if that's true, I created this, therefore I can change it. What an empowering state to live in. And for me, a lot for our children, because they are our future. I mean, if 40% of the jobs that we have today in 2020 aren't going to be there in a decade, it's our children that are going to be creating these new jobs. So they get to be that empowered space of possibility. And it starts with them, but it also begins with us, because we're the ones who have set the container so far, and our limitations get passed down whether we like it or not. So being the cause of that change, to me, is part of my mission, my driven mission to get that out into the world so you can be more. So
Yeah,
we're doing it in Canada, which is super fun. I think there may be a few places that have done it before, but I'm excited to like bust out and bring it all together. So anyone who's interested in being a part of it, I welcome. If you're feeling called, like, by all means, you want to live your greatest life, or you want to live your vision, or you haven't yet lived your dreams, jump in, reach out to me. I'll give you my link, so you can put it in there, and they can have a call with me, and we'll talk about it, and like, give yourself the gift of more of you, the fully expressed you. I mean, I would want nothing more. I think it would be the most valuable gift you can give yourself, and your friends and family will feel the effects of that, and your children, if you have them now, or if you intend on it, will also be immersed in that frequency, which would be beautiful.
Exactly, yeah. What I'm hearing is that feeling, that state of joy. The more we tap into that, the more we feel that, the more we can create that in our reality as well.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's tough to imagine what it feels like to feel joyful most of the time. And I understand that. And it's possible. And I mean, giving yourself the ability to just go, you know what, I haven't experienced it yet, and I'm totally willing to experiencing it. It will cause it to occur. It's like, okay, fine. I'm jumping in. I'm just going to give it a shot. I'm going to jump in, and my intention is to live a more joyful life. And that is perpetuated everywhere. So it then spills out into your career, with your family, with your friends, your home life, your abundance. It kind of goes everywhere. And how many people do you know that have been like, that have ever done the training, that come out the other side and went, oh, that's, I don't know anyone, because you're going in for you. Like, you're not doing it for someone else. You're doing it for yourself. And so when you're going in, your intention is going to be matched. So go in with the ultimate, like, otherworldly, completely like outrageous intention for your life and yourself, and you're going to come out the other side with the path of possibility.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your divine experiences and your magic. So for those who are wanting to connect with you, how can they do that? What's the best way?
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll give you a link. You can put it below your video, so you have it.
Any links? Okay.
Yeah, you go to wendypaquette.com. You'll find all the latest stuff that I'm doing and that I'm up to there. It's WENDY, then P as in Paul, AQUETTE.com. So if you go there, you'll find all of the fun stuff that I'm up to, and you'll be able to pop in. And if you want to have a conversation about anything, about doing the training or working with me in some capacity, you can book an appointment on my schedule, and we'll have a conversation like this so we can talk about it. I would love all the, those completely like enlightened beings, magical beings, beings, people that want to be happy, joyful, whatever it looks like. I mean, that's what I'm opening this container for. So jump in.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, and I will put the links, share the links below. So once again, this has been a delight to connect and share some more magical information. Have you any last empowering words you'd like to leave the audience with?
Oh, I love that question. So many. Everything's possible. Everything and anything is possible. The only thing that decides that it's not is your brain, this gray matter that sits inside your head. It keeps the programs of what you've decided is true for you. And so if you're after something, it's not that you can't have it. It's that you must hold a belief system that believes you can't, and therefore you aren't. Otherwise you would be. And so that's easily changeable.
Yeah.
Easily changeable. Yeah. There is absolutely everything available to you in this very moment right now. So go for it. And if not, just find me and let's talk about it, because I will show you the way.
Yeah, brilliant. And what's coming to my mind is be careful about the paintings in your grandparents' or your parents' house, because they may well get reproduced somewhere else along the line in your life.
Yeah, who would have thought? Oh my goodness, that's really funny.
Okay, well, thank you so much once again. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can get the notifications for the next videos. And I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're
Thank
so
you
welcome.
for watching. I look forward to speaking with all you beautiful beings out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.